The Festival of Termina is an event arranged by the older gods. To our knowledge, the moon god is often involved in this puzzling jubilee. We do not understand the underlying meaning behind this festival, but in short it's a free-for-all, a battle royal if you will, between multiple contestants. Supposedly there is a grand prize waiting at the end. When the commuters arrive in Bohemia, their dreams are invaded by a strange man. Dressed as a devil, he welcomes them to a jubilee of cosmic proportions, and tells them that they have 3 days to kill one another, and make it to the tower at the centre of Prehevil, where they will be recognised as the winner of Termina, and then they all woke up. In their first conversation as a group, nobody really knows what to make of it. Karen throws out a story about the Bremen using experimental drugs and hallucinogens on them, explaining she's seen something similar before. Dawn though points out that when hallucinogens are used by the Bremen, the victims don't have a shared vision. Different people experience different things, and while Karen's theory is shot down, nobody really bothers to author a counter-thesis. The second time we hear about the festival is after finding the woodsman, who caves another man's head in while screaming about Termina, so the dream clearly wasn't regulated to just the train. We kill the woodsman and find his body has gone through a series of mutations. His skin looks burned and boiled, and his other axe has developed its own sentience. Another man we encounter is the Vial, who along with having the same mutations as the woodsman, has a mask fused to his face. In the city we can find even more horrors, malformed mutated humanoids, all of whom, while different in shape and structure, have the same symptoms. Skin that appears to have been burnt and boiled, along with growths and tumours. Eventually the commuters will have to sleep, and they'll find themselves once again with Percole, who will tell them how many contestants are still left, and will remind them to come to the tower. In the background of these scenes we see Rare, an old god, often called the Trickster Moon by his haters, and he is purportedly the architect of this festival. He bathes a part of the world in his glowing green hue, causing an illness called moonlight cancer. Apparently this is something that he does somewhat regularly. A horrifying truth becomes apparent though, as our time slowly ticks down. Noshra accompanies Osar to the festival, acting as an advisor to the young Yellow Mage, and he notes to Osar that the festival was different to other Termina events, without specifying exactly why. The strange thing we learn as the commuters travel through Prehevil is that the Termina event the contestants find themselves in isn't the only one to have happened in Prehevil recently. It's actually the third. Before the end of the Great War and the Bremen occupation, the city of Prehevil had order. That's not to say Prehevil was a pleasant place to live, or an exemplar of modernity, but there was at least some semblance of society within the capital of Bohemia, until people started having a dream. Exploring the city we find flyers, warning residents about the man in the dream. Have you seen this man in dreams? Over the past week or so since the full moon, people all over Prehevil and its neighbouring settlements see this face in their dreams every night. If you are one of them, or if you have any information that can help us identify this person, please contact us. On the flyer is a drawing of Percole's face. It's unclear who created the flyers, but they're fairly common in Prehevil and can be found anywhere in the city or in its outskirts. The Woodsman, the Vial, the Bobbies. Almost everyone we encounter in the old town and the city were the losers of the previous event. Their transformations are a consequence of not finding a winner within the time limit. It seems that the policy of Prehevil's upper classes was to try and obfuscate the crisis as much as possible. Moon-scorched people in the city were dumped in the poverty-stricken old town at first, until their numbers became just too much. At the Tower of the Moon, we find tons of bodies. All are untransformed, so at least some people took part in the festival. The Bobbies and the Inquisitors were once Prehevil's law enforcement, maintaining peace in the city, and now attempt to purge anything that disturbs their jurisdiction. The Bobbies and Inquisitors seem to have full control over east and central Prehevil, and are clearly working in unison together. In combat with the Inquisitor, they can use their bell to summon Bobbies to aid them. The Inquisitors were perhaps lower level priests, as in combat they're able to use Grogoroth magic to attack. The west of the city is in ruins. The Bremen seem to have engaged with Prehevil's Moonscorched. We find an area devastated by war, with every Moonscorched in the area left in a free-for-all. It seems like this conflict devolves pretty early on, and the powers that be of Prehevil left this part of the city to wither and die, focusing on themselves, while they were able to at least. I've mentioned the elites of Prehevil a few times thus far. So, where are they? The Museum of Prehevil. The museum is an endgame location, with several dangerous encounters inside. We also find the place filled with partygoers, the movers and shakers of Prehevil, throwing a costume ball at the end of the world. If we talk to them, they repeat the same lines, over and over. All of these people are frozen in time. It seems they wanted to ignore the Termina crisis until they no longer could. Aesthetically speaking, the scene resembles Eyes Wide Shut and The Mask of Red Death. Stories about elites living in debauchery and luxury, ignoring the horrors of the world and the consequences of their own actions. A factor that makes the first Termina event strange is the logistics behind it, because it seems to have included everyone in the city of Prehevil and even some outside settlements. Even if everyone took part from day one, no question asked, how on earth could a winner have emerged within 3 days? It seems logistically impossible. Let's assume the woodsman and some random inquisitor were the last two standing. What are the odds they'd even be able to run into each other? Rare and Percolate clearly aren't searching for a winner then, if indeed they're working in unison, but rather it seems they're looking to create chaos. In Prehevil West, amidst the ruins, we can find a lone Bremen trooper wandering around, gun pointed aimlessly, just on the outskirts of Prehevil's forest. He's the only normal Bremen soldier left in town. He'll attack us on sight, but we can talk to him and he'll divulge some critical information. You are new. What do you want? What happened here? We came here. We got the orders straight from the Kaiser himself. But it was a mistake. Now everyone's dead, or worse. What's worse than dead? You must have seen the residents of this godforsaken place. That fate awaits us all. My comrades already succumbed to the chaos. My skin is still pretty, but my mind is deteriorating at a rapid rate. 3 days is the limit, just like what he said. The second Termina event occurred after the Bremen rolled into Prehevil. The trooper's reference to Percule's 3 days warning indicates that his own Termina event, the second one, hasn't come to an end yet, which means it might be happening concurrently to ours. If we kill him and have Darn examine the body, we'll find out that the man hasn't succumbed to Moonscorching just yet, but is showing early signs of mutation. Specifically, he has cataracts, and his wits have clearly started to abandon him, but his overall lack of change reveals something unsettling. Percule is not bluffing about the 3-day limit. It's clear that the Bremen army quickly collapsed, with the trooper admitting that he killed his commanders, considering that he's the only normal Bremen trooper we find. I do have to wonder if technically he won this Termina event. The only thing left with the Bremen forces is Kaiser and his elite troops. Now, the Kaiser is a special case in his own right, which I won't get into here, and the elite troops are also seemingly immune to Rare's effects. Possibly because they're a marriage. Now, you might be wondering what exactly a marriage is. Well, to summarise, two people who play Naked Twister together inside of a ritual circle can accidentally, or maybe not, form a marriage. A union of flesh, and the ultimate tribute to Sylvan, which, while horrific, may have helped the elite troopers avoid a fate far worse. Speaking of the confusing powers and lore of the old gods, we should talk about Rare for a moment, but more specifically, Moonscorching. The moonlight reveals all, or at least that's what the acolytes of Rare seem to think. We can find an odd note in the city of Prehevil titled Truth Under the Moonlight. Who of us doesn't cover their true face and hide behind a persona? In the broad daylight we adopt a social role, depending on the surrounding people. We put on a mask that works as the public image of our true personality. Do we hide our face to avoid the judgment of the people? Or do we look down in shame as the sun watches our every move? A sun that knows our deepest longings and lustful thoughts. Only in the darkness of the night does the true and vile nature of men get revealed. We share our decrepit bodies, only to the select few under the moonlight, despite what lowly thieves covering in the shadow would like you to think. The moonlight hides no one. The note has no author. It seems like it's some kind of religious document though. Rare is the god of the moon, and any mention of the moon in the Fear and Hunger games aren't coincidental. Moonscorching, also called moonlight cancer, is a process of intense mutation that occurs after the trickster moon Rare shines his light upon you, bathing you in a green hue. This leaves the victim's skin blistering and burning. But it doesn't just affect the body, but their mind as well. Enki, in his skin Bible on Rare, reflects on what exactly Moonscorching is. Rare is depicted as the god of the insane, and those who have succumbed to madness. His blessing to men is his moonlight, which is said to uncover the truth under the human filth. According to the Bible, some people consider Moonscorching to be akin to receiving revelation, Rare's light stripping away the masks that people wear to reveal what they really are underneath, with most not having the mental fortitude to handle it. Enki questions this narrative though, and points out Rare's hypocrisy. While the old god uses its power to supposedly reveal the truth of mankind to itself, it remains in the sky, never communicating with mankind, and acting through weirdo agents who communicate exclusively in riddles. And this raises a pertinent question of whether Rare's truth is somehow more objective than humanity's own self-perception. We should talk for a moment about Carl Jung. Carl Jung had a theory on the personality and the different components that make it up. And one of those components he referred to as the shadow. The shadow is the dark side of one's personality, the part of our psyche that we don't want society to see, and sometimes don't even want to acknowledge in ourselves. Our insecurities, our repressed memories, our darker desires and impulses. Essentially, I believe Moonscorching forces the shadow to completely overwhelm the rest of the psyche, which is why, despite the physical transformations all having the same mutations more or less, the psychological impact of Moonscorching varies wildly from person to person. Some become crying wretches, others violent lunatics, others become infinitely better conversationalists. All but 2 of the contestants have their own unique moonscorched form that reflect their internal insecurities and desires. I do have a final point of speculation on Moonscorching before we move on. The contestants each have a unique form that seems specific to who they are and their own personal hang-ups, but in Prehevil we find tons of Moonscorched that are more or less similar. This could also highlight a dilution effect. The more of a spread the moonlight has to hit, the less specific the transformations are, but that is just speculation on my end. And there are a few people in Prehevil who have unique Moonscorched forms, so I could just be reading too much into what was essentially a decision made by the developer to save time. In any case, it's clear, under the green hue of Rare's glare, nobody is safe. The 14 commuters are a part of the final Termina event, and in a battle royal against each other, their contest can end with every Moonscorched in the city alive. As long as the commuters are dead, the event can be won. We don't know whether multiple Termina events are typical or not. There's no evidence to say so one way or the other, but what we do know is that Perculate isn't really a devotee of Rare. In fact, he worships another god, a being of violence and malice, named Sulphur, a mysterious god with its own agenda in the grand scheme of things. Perculate also claims that Rare is dead and gone, and only his trace remains. All I'll say about that for now is I take that claim with a huge grain of salt. But let's say for sake of argument that that's true. That would mean that Perculate is the one pulling the strings on the Termina events, which means that Sulphur is the real man behind the curtain, so to speak, which is where I think the Battle Royal aspect of it comes from. According to the new gods, Termina is an event arranged by the older gods. Gods, plural, as in more than one, and while the event is more often than not attributed to Rare, it doesn't seem strictly like one god operation. In fact, I suspect different gods bring different stipulations to the table, and for Sulphur the stipulation is Battle Royale. In any case, the Termina events in Prehevil don't seem random. In fact, they seem desperate, almost like Rare, Perculate, or whoever is responsible is desperately trying to prevent something from happening. But maybe I'm just reading too much into it. After all, when one seeks the truth, they ought to be wary of falling into holes of conspiracy. Though perhaps a certain intrepid reporter will be able to unearth some of these conspiracies